Hey Summit, hope you all are doing well today, wherever you're at. Today I'm going to kind of talk about relationships. So I wanted to start off by sharing a brief story of something that happened recently with me and a good friend. So the other day he came to me expressing that he was having some challenges with his girlfriend and they're having relationship problems, and so he came to tell me those things. And I'm no relationship expert, but immediately when he told me what was going on, my mind started racing with all of these thoughts and ideas of what can I say that could help him, or what can maybe I could tell him what I would do in the situation that could help him out. And then the next day, or a few days later, he came back to me and said that things were a lot better now, and he was thankful that we could talk, but he told me that he was hoping for just an ear to talk to, and that he was hoping that I could just be present with him and feel how he was feeling for a moment as he felt kind of alone in this situation. So maybe at some point you have felt that way, where someone has expressed something maybe serious or something sad or anything that maybe feels uncomfortable in the moment, and you are kind of racking your brain trying to think of things to say or not sure how to react to the situation. I know that was how I was feeling during that conversation. Well, when looking for life guidance, I think that the best source we can go to is Jesus. He's the perfect example because he lived the perfect life. For this week, I will be talking about the shortest verse in the Bible, and that is John 11:35. Jesus wept. And I just love that verse because I think one of the reasons why it stands out to me is because it's the shortest, but also it gives us a glimpse of Jesus' humanity, which I think is so personal and is the main reason why that verse has always stuck with me. So let's look at the surrounding verses to get some context. John 11:32 through 36. When Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. "Where have you laid him?" he asked. "Come and see, Lord," they replied. Jesus wept. Then the Jews said, "See how he loved him." So here we see Mary is running to tell Jesus that her brother Lazarus had died. And Jesus wept after hearing the news and seeing the mourners weeping. This seems like a pretty natural response to hearing the news that someone had died. But Jesus knew that in a few short minutes, all the weeping was going to turn to joy. He had come to bring the best news they could have imagined, the news that he was going to resurrect Lazarus. Yet he was greatly troubled and wept. And why is that? One reason is simply the deep compassion that Jesus feels towards those who are suffering. In Lamentations 3:33, it says, "For he does not willingly afflict or grieve the children of men." Even though Jesus always chooses to do what will ultimately bring his Father the most glory, sometimes, as in Lazarus' case, it requires affliction and grief. He does not take delight in the affliction and grief itself. Jesus is sympathetic, and in this example of Jesus at Lazarus' tomb, we get a glimpse of how the Father feels over affliction and grief in his children. Since Jesus is the perfect example of how to live our lives, let's take a closer look at what Jesus did in this moment of sadness. Jesus has the power to heal Lazarus instantly and make everyone happy again. However, he did not do that immediately. He wept. I think this is the most powerful thing that I noticed in this passage. Even if we know how we can help someone, maybe it is more meaningful to be present and sit with them in their feelings. There is more evidence in the Bible that shows us how being present is a biblical response. In Romans 12:15, it says, "Rejoice with those who rejoice, mourn with those who mourn." Sometimes being present does not always feel like enough action. I find that when I'm being present and trying to resist urges to help, and I feel like I'm failing them for not giving enough advice. But I think an important note is that when finding this verse in Romans, I noticed that the chapter was titled Love in Action. So maybe when it feels like you're not doing something, you actually are. When thinking about this idea of being present, I was reminded of this analogy that I once heard. And the analogy is that someone has fallen in a hole, and you have several options of getting them out of the hole. The first option is to reach down and try and pull them out with your hand. The second option is to find a rope and pull them out of the hole. And the third option is to get a ladder and climb down in the hole with them and see where they're at and check in on them, make sure they're okay. And I think that ideally, if this was a real situation, I think the first two also make sense. But when someone is in the time of need, I think that the latter method would be the best. I think that sometimes when we're trying to pull someone out of a hole, it can not really acknowledge the pain that someone is going through. And by going in the hole with them, and by feeling what they're feeling, and meeting them face to face, you can then have the conversations of maybe talking about advice or things like that. But if you're coming from the top of the hole and trying to look down at them at the bottom of the hole, you can see why that height difference would make it kind of more uncomfortable to have that conversation. So the next time that you aren't sure what to say or do for someone in need, I encourage you to take a brief moment before you take action and ask yourself, have I been present with them yet? And have I listened to their thoughts and concerns fully yet? Imagine what would happen if we all took the time to be present with friends, loved ones, and maybe even neighbors. How would our relationships evolve if everyone feels more loved and heard? Thanks for listening to me, Summit. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and maybe I'll even see you on Wednesday. Have a good one.